Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Boomy How-To. In this video, I'm going to be going over a step-by-step sort of guide for setting up manual OAuth 2 calls using the client credentials grant type. You might want to do this if, say, you're using like an HTTP client connector and the formatting's just not supported by that. There's some cases where that has been the case. This method could be used to get around it. With that, I can just hop right into it and just start with our first shape. So we're gonna have our no data start shape, and then we're gonna use a branch shape. There's gonna be two separate branches with this. The first one is going to be the actually get the token, our authentication token, and then the second branch is going to be how we make the call. Right. So we'll focus on branch one. I'm not going to be putting any actual values in here, just for security sake. But the next shape we'll have is a message shape. In here is going to be our URL encoded message body. So there is a document as well we can use to if you need these steps and the actual how to format the body. I'll link that in the description. But for this case, we'll have the grant type equal to client credentials and scope. If you're not using a scope, you don't need to put that there. But we can put in a variable value if you want to change it. Same thing with the client ID. And the client secret. If you're worried about the client secret and all that being available in the actual process, like as a variable, you can save it as a encrypted process property, like so. If you click on the value, we'll do if I can find it, process property. I'll just make a new one for this, add it, be a hidden value, and you can paste it here. And then pass it in as a replacement variable for this message shape. But that should be it for the message itself. You'll just need the scope if you're using one, the client ID and the client secret within this. And there might be a couple other um, parameters you need to pass here, but for the most part, these are the three most common that we've seen. All right. Once that's created, we'll connect it. This next one is kind of optional. It depends on how your scope looks and your other values. You might need the URL encode the message body because Boomi doesn't do that by itself. You would need to use a data process shape. And depending on the string that's in there, you could either use a search and replace and just search the um, actual characters that you need to be URL encoded with. Or there is a script you could also use to just URL and encode the entire message body. I wouldn't recommend that one though. I would recommend just doing the individual characters that need to be URL encoded because not everything in this needs to be URL encoded, only some of the special characters. But if you need to do that, that is the way to get around that. You might see like 401 or not 401s, like 500 bad endpoint or 400 bad requests if it's not URL encoded. Right. After that, we would use a HTTP client connector. With the send operation, we don't have to configure the connection. That can be whatever you want. The operation is what we need to look at. We can keep the request profiles blank. The content type, though, is going to be at the very bottom, this application XWWW form URL encoded. We're going to return the responses, the HTTP responses, and we'll return errors and follow redirects. And then if you want to change the path here for the connection, you can put it in. Same with the request headers if you need to. If you'd save that. All right. And then finally, for branch one, we'll have a set property shape. It would be a dynamic process property. Maybe you can just name it token. I'll name it DPP underscore token. And then this, you're going to get the value from the response from the first call from the HTTP client. Um, I like to grab it from a profile. So what you can do is you can run it just how it is now and download the response that this gives you, the actual whole JSON that it will return with the token. And then you would be able to import it as a JSON profile, so you don't have to make one manually. Profile element. Then we would do JSON, and then you would just do this. You create a new one, and then you can import it from a file. And that would be the file. The file would be the response from the HTTP client connector, and it would just structure it. And then for the profile element, you would choose the access token or JWT token, whatever one you actually use. And it will save the HTTP, or not the HTTP, it will save the access token or JWT token as the dynamic document property token. After that, we will have a stop shape, and that would complete branch one. Branch two would be the actual call you would make. So you would have your message that you're trying to send. You can use a message shape, or you can come from another part of the process if you're using a data pass through, or if this is like a child process. But I'll just type in message body just so you get the idea. So this would be the actual payload we're sending. Next would be another set property shape. And we will use a dynamic document property. We'll name it DDP underscore token. And we'll set the value of this to a dynamic process property we made, which is DPP underscore token. We can save that. That way it gets the token value you got from the first branch. It pushes it here. I'm actually going to rename this. We want it to match with what's in the it's what's going to be in the HTTP client connector as a replacement variable for a header. It's going to be authorization. Copy that from there. So we want the dynamic document property authorization with the value set to our DPP we set in branch one. All right, and then finally we'll have another HTTP client connector. This will also be a send. You can use the same connection if you want. The connection has to be no authorization though, because we're going to be passing the token into the operation using a replacement variable. So the most important part would be the request header. This is where we're actually going to be passing in the token itself. We'll make an authorization header and we'll make it a replacement variable. Right. And then for the resource path, you can put in whatever you want. We usually want to return responses and errors and follow redirects. I'm sending plain text. Click save. Then we connect it to that. Then I'll just have a stop shape. So what this will do, in summary, is it will have a branch. Branch one will execute and actually receive the token. You'll be passing it as URL encoded values for the actual parameters. This will receive the token, and then you'll be saving it as a dynamic process property. And then branch two is where we're actually making the call. This will be your message body, your payload that you're sending. This set property shape will set a dynamic document property as authorization, with the value being the dynamic process property we set in branch one. And then since we have a replacement variable set in the connector operation with named authorization, it will use that dynamic document property value, which is the token, and pass it in here. One more thing for the actual token name or value. We typically, it's typically a bearer token that you're sending. So you want to add another value, just a static value, another parameter value. It's going to be static bearer, and then you're going to put a space after that. And then you're going to move this using these arrows in front of it. So the whole value of this dynamic document property now will be bearer space, and then it will be the actual token. So that way it would be a valid bearer token that you're sending. And the reason we send it using dynamic document properties instead of the actual parameter values in the HTTP client connector instead of these, it's because when you're using a send operation in the HTTP client connector, these parameters will overwrite anything that you're sending. So this request body wouldn't send, it would just overwrite it with this. That's why we use the dynamic document properties to pass the replacement variables. All right, but that's the higher level overview of what each shape does here and how to build out the manual OAuth 2 calls using two HTTP client connectors for client credentials. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.